Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, Supercharge Your Requirements Management in Azure DevOps, a demo of modern requirements for DevOps. We will get started in just a few minutes here, so just hang on, thanks. All right, hi everyone, and thank you again for joining us for today's webinar. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us here today. During this webinar, we're going to go through a full demo of modern requirements so you can see it in action. To start off, I'm just going to go through a few quick housekeeping items, and then I will pass it over to today's speakers. If you just go to the next slide. As a quick reminder, we do offer a free 30-day trial of modern requirements. Sorry, just go back one slide. There you go. Yeah, so you can visit the link on the screen, modernrequirements.com/try-now at any point to claim your free trial. We'll also have it linked in the chat window so you can access it there at any time. Today's speakers include myself and Breen as your host and moderator for today, Asif Sharif, our Chief Technologist, who's going to give you a little bit more of a background on modern requirements, and Shala, who's going to be giving you the full demo today. Following the webinar, we're going to be sending out the recording via email, and it'll also be available on our website right after. So if you're not able to stay for the full webinar or you'd like to share it with your team, it will be available for you then. We're also going to spend some time towards the end of the session for questions, and we'd love to hear from you. So please drop your questions in the question box on the control panel at any time during the session, and we'll get to it at the end. And lastly, we do have a feedback survey that pops up once you leave the webinar, and we'd really appreciate it if you could spend a couple moments just giving us your feedback and rating today's webinar so we can just make sure that these improve for you moving forward. All right, over to you, Asif.
All right, thank you, Breen. Hey folks, good morning, or perhaps good evening if you're joining us from Europe or places further out. So what we're going to do today is we'll be talking about modern requirements, and modern requirements is a extension to Azure DevOps, to Microsoft's Azure DevOps. So about 10 some odd years ago, Microsoft reached out to us and said, why don't you build modern requirements on TFS, because TFS was the original name, Team Foundation Server, to what is now called Azure DevOps. And so we decided to take their lead on that, and we built the entire requirements management platform on Azure DevOps. Now, of course, Azure DevOps being used by hundreds of millions of people around the globe makes it a very attractive platform to work on. And as such, we've been working with Microsoft for at least a decade now. We help clients that use Microsoft or want to use Microsoft as Azure DevOps in their requirements management needs. Now, of course, when you talk about requirements management, you can't talk about requirements management without talking about the whole bunch of other things that you have to consider. So you want an integrated ecosystem of solutions. So whether you're looking at test management, build management, release management, integrating it with various source control systems like Git, or integrating and syncing data with a variety of other systems like Jira or QC and so on. Rarely do you find organizations that are very monolithic in using a platform. They might have many, especially if you're a large organization. So you want to bring everything together. And using Azure DevOps with modern requirements allows you to do all of the above. So the three key value proposition that most of us are trying to pursue is we want to shorten cycle time. And this is not only just doing sprints faster, but the overall product completion, we want it to be faster. So we want to be more efficient. We want to increase value flow. So you want to understand how information is constructed and how layers of information support other layers of information, so that you can actually see where the value is, and then of course in realizing your vision of what you're trying to do. And then lastly, to reduce rework. A tremendous amount of work is done that ought not to be done, because there's a lot of redundancy in what we do. So we want to eliminate that rework by either doing things right in the first place, or perhaps through communicating more efficiently, or through reuse, or using various tools of analysis that modern requirements will provide you. I think one thing that's become amply evident through this COVID crisis is we need better collaboration. We need better tooling to help collaborate various teams and individuals, stakeholders in a distributed manner. Now, that was the scenario already pre-COVID, but I think during the COVID days, it certainly has become much more important. Now, when people work, they use a variety of different approaches. So here are 7 different process templates. The first 3 are coming directly from Microsoft. The next 4 we have developed, so they are more specialized. So for example, the compliance template is used by organizations that do medical device development or pharma work, or even for other organizations that do a variety of things. And then you got your BA-BOK and BA-BOK Agile. So we worked with IIBA a few years ago and came up with the BA-BOK process template and the BA-BOK Agile process template based on the BA-BOK Agile extension that they had written. And then there's the product development process template. Now, of course, these process templates are simply starting points, but you can morph them to your needs. So you can define your own work item types and your own requirements hierarchy, your own workflows, and so on and so forth. But what you'll find is that what you do need is, depending on who you are, you need different type of process templates, and you need different tooling. You'll find that Modern Requirements is a very comprehensive tool that's used by leading organizations in the world. They may be large, like some of these names here, or they may be smaller, very energetic, creative people that need a good technology to not only do requirements, but also do compliance and to collaborate with all the various stakeholders. Now, one of the things that you see, when I was young and smart, I used to be a developer. And one thing I learned very quickly is that when you build systems, you have to make it configurable. Because even a particular solution that you're building for a very particular scenario, inevitably will morph into supporting other variations of things. And so you need the ability to configure things. So configurability and extensibility are extremely important characteristics of a good system. And as such, with Azure DevOps and Modern Requirements, you have a lot of configurability available. So you can configure pretty much everything in the system. Now, what does Modern Requirements provide? Certainly, if you look at the bottom tier here, which is the foundation, which is Azure DevOps, so you've got things like workflow and taxonomy, which is your process template, your permissions management, dashboarding, planning, boards, alerts, and security, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole bunch of things that becomes the foundation for Modern Requirements. And many of you who are using Azure DevOps will know that that is world-class. And on top of that, we build capabilities for reporting and authoring. One of our flagship capability is the Smart Docs, which really is a hybrid between document management and work item management, gives you the best of both worlds. Or when you get into project auditability, you have things like review management or trace analysis. You also have things like baselining or impact assessment. You can also create visuals within the tool. So if you're doing diagramming, so if you use Visio, but if you use Visio, Visio is a separate product, and then you use Azure DevOps for requirements, and then there's a disconnect there. We can bring it together. The same thing for mockups, which is simulation. And if you are creating use cases, if you're doing Agile at scale, or if you're doing a more conventional structured approach, then the use case editor becomes quite useful. And from the efficiency point of view, reuse is extremely important. You'll find that the knowledge management strategy that looks at the information that you're creating as organizational knowledge, you will find that that kind of a outlook towards your requirements and your specifications of what needs to be done will lead you to can lead to a lot of reuse. And so what you ultimately do is you develop a library organically of information that can be reused. So across projects, you will continue to reuse things and continue to add to the library so that knowledge is captured and processed. You can just wing it, and many people wing it and they still get a lot of benefit out of it, or you can be more organized about establishing a knowledge base for reuse. So there's a lot of capabilities. Of course, this is just at a high level. There are many other things the system does. Depending on which industry you are in, so many of our clients use Agile or Agile at scale. Others use more structured based requirements, especially if you are into, if you're in a pharma, or you are doing medical devices, or you're doing engineering, if you're NASA, or if you're building cars or engineering products. In that case, you'll probably not use Agile in its raw form. You'll put more of a structure to that, because you do need to be able to support various compliance needs, various standards, either ISO standards or FDA standards, and so on. And again, Modern Requirements provides a variety of tools to support those types of processes as well. So depending again on who you are and what you need, you'll find that Modern Requirements has all the right pieces to help you succeed in doing your projects well. Oh yeah, by the way, the one thing that Modern Requirements does is, so say you have you've got a work item, say your hazard work item or a risk work item, and then based on, say, severity and occurrence values, other third parameters calculated. And this calculation can be configured in the system so that if there are certain fields that have to be calculated, you don't have to spend time doing it manually and things getting out of sync and people making errors. So that can be configured. In fact, we have clients that actually create hundreds of rules like this for calculation when they're doing risk management or hazard management kind of work. So what we'll do now is we'll do a quick polling, and after the polling, we'll get into the demo of Modern Requirements, and you will see why Modern Requirements is awesome. So the first polling question is your organization currently using Azure DevOps? And the lion's share of the people have said yes. Excellent. And if you do, good for you. And if you don't, you should obviously consider using Azure DevOps. And I think Shala will show a little bit about Azure DevOps, some of the foundational stuff, because it is simply awesome. The next question is the organization using Modern Requirements? So here we are trying to understand if you're already using, are you using this webinar a refresher? Are you just a new person in that organization but want to learn more about it, or you're new to it and you want to learn more about it? And we have a good percentage is already using, and then there are many more that aren't using it today. So, well, welcome, guys. Hopefully what you'll see here will be very interesting. And what methodology do you use today? Are you more agile? Of course, agile has many flavors to it. Waterfall, hybrid, or some other approach. And what we're seeing here is that about half the people are using agile, 40% are using hybrid, others are using waterfall or other. Excellent, thank you. And then the last question is, what is your role in your organization? I was going to have us put superhero in there as well, but decided to not do that, because then everybody would say they're superheroes, as I'm sure you guys are. So the results here are, we've got 80% are business or systems analysts or product owners. And then we've got some testers, some project managers, and a few compliance analysts. With that, I would say that's awesome. Thank you. And this is when I'll hand it over to Shala. Shala, you can share your screen and give us a demo of model requirements. And folks, as we're going through this thing, if you have questions, just type in your questions in the question panel. So either we'll answer it as the session is happening, or towards the end we'll leave 10 some odd minutes to answer all your questions. Over to you, Shala.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Asif, and welcome everybody once again. As Asif mentioned and Amreen mentioned, my name is Shala Joseph. I am the manager of client success team, and a little bit of background with me while I'm going to be sharing my screen too. Amreen, just to let you know that I hope that I'm the presenter to be able to share my screen as I do a little bit. Thank you. Perfect. So a little bit of background on me. I am, of course, by trade a business analyst. I have done some PM work. I've also done in terms of QA testing, some UAT testing too, which is user acceptance testing as well. So I understand the pain points that folks on the phone might be coming from in terms of your gathering your requirements and able to do a one-stop shop for everyone. And there are some key points that we would like to see in terms of when we start working within an online tool. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I hope you folks can all see it. Now, what is more important? What's the most important thing that when you are working online, in order for you to even having a one-stop shop has always been the object of affection for folks that are business analysts or PMs or doing your QA work, because you want to be able to have access to all the work in one application. And I remember in my previous life having to go through different applications, log into with your 4 or 5 different, of course, passwords that we all have to remember and have to change them after every 3 months too. And there comes the whole cycle of recycling your passwords, right? So the things that are important to us is, of course, in a project lifecycle, we want to have requirements management. We want to be able to have a single source of truth. We want to do resource management and generating reports for our work we have done. Efficiency, of course, very imperative. Change management, end-to-end traceability, reusability, flowcharts, diagrams, of course, and review and approval of work that you have created. And what if I told you that all that we have mentioned here is available online in one tool? Well, you say, well, Shala, that sounds fantastic. I would really like to see it. Well, guess what? We will be able to show you that, because Modern Requirement is a tool that helps you to do all of the things that we talked about just now online. And first of all, of course, Asif has mentioned too that modern requirement is built on Azure DevOps, which is, of course, I'm going to refer to as ADO as I go along in my presentation. And there are some very useful and powerful tools that are already available in ADO. And of course, if you are an ADO user, you already know this, like there's dashboards that are available. You can create dashboards from queries, and queries is one of my favorite tools in ADO. And once you have created this as a PM, I really want to have a view of what my project is doing in terms of where do I stand in assignment of work item, where do I sit in the completion of my work item, what's the state of my work item that is sitting in. And of course, you can have hundreds and hundreds of work items in your online tool. So ADO helps you to build your dashboards and have a, for me, optics is very important, right? I want to be able to see the work that I've done. So just wanted to give you a little quick view of how you can create you can have a dashboard available on your ADO tool. And just to kind of throw that in there too, is that any work that you will be doing in modern requirements will also be available in ADO. So let's say if you're creating a work item that is a diagram work item that you created in ADO on modern requirements, where do you see that? Well, no worries, that will be available in your dashboard too, because the system will fetch the data both from ADO and modern requirement will be able to present to you in optics here. Now that's great. Now let's run into where we're talking about ADO, backlogs. This is your storage, where you're keeping all your work items, right? You're actually building your work items here. You're creating your, so I have created for today's demonstration, I've created a hybrid process template. And as Asif mentioned as well, that you could have many different process templates depending on your needs. If you're working with agile methodology and you're like, well, I'm only interested in epic feature users, or sure, you can do that too. In my hybrid today, what I have is that, of course, I have my agile and BA BOK. Both of the process templates are combined together because some of your folks in your project might be working with agile, and some of them might want to be able to create some user stories, and some might want to do non-functional requirements. Sure, we don't push them away. You want to do that? No problem. You can create your user stories and your non-functional requirements because ADO allows you to customize your process template to your need. Now, let's talk about where you have already done some work and you're like, well, I've created some user stories, I've created some non-functional requirements. I want to be able to take this work and share with somebody outside of my online tool. But I can't do that today because I'm unable to create reports for that. Well, no worries. Modern requirement is able to solve that problem for you. Let's say I take these work items right here. I'm just going to highlight a few and maybe one of my non-functional requirement. And I want to be able to create a report from here. How do we do that? Go to these little ellipses that you have, click on that, and of course, it will give you your context menu. On the top, you see your out of the box ADO menu. Yeah. Down below, you see modern requirement. Anything in blue is in modern requirement tools. And it's in blue because it's good for your health. And, you know, if you go to a market and you're purchasing something, you see a blue menu, you know it's good for your health, right? Low in sodium, low in sugar. And here we have something that is good for you too, because you will be able to do what you have been wanting to do all these years by working with ADO. What's the first thing? I want to be able to generate reports, right? Now, of course, in modern requirement, you have the capability of generating reports to your needs. For instance, you can go to the designer tab and you can design it to your heart's content. You're like, well, you know, I want to bring in some work items. I want to bring in some fields that I want to see in my output that I would generate on MS Word, PDF, or HTML. Now, in essence of time, I'm just going to show you what we have done for you is that we have just created a few of our out of the default values that we've created. And one of my favorite one here is that form with table. What it does is that it fetches the data that you have selected. And of course, it will be able to bring in your work item with all of its properties. Yeah, your images, if you have created some diagrams, if you've created some images that you brought into your work items, sure, it's available. And now I can easily go in and push it onto MS Word, PDF, or HTML. And this is something new that we've also offered, that you can now use your own specific template that you can push your data onto by using your very customized template, rather because you're already working with Word, right? You're like, well, I have been working with Word. I have a template that I've created for my clients that I want to continue using. No problem. We do not discriminate. You can go ahead and utilize the same process template and push your data onto it. Of course, once you upload your Word template into the system, the good news is that it will always be available in your pull-down menu. So I don't have to constantly, as a business analyst, if I'm creating my BRDs or if I'm creating my requirements, my user stories, my non-functional and functional system requirements, whatever you may want to call it, right? Whatever fancies you, you can bring them here and you can use that template that you've brought in to push that work onto. Now that's one. Number two, what if you wanted to take these work items and send them out for review and approval? So A, you can do reporting by using modern requirement tools. Number two, you want to be able to say that I want to send it to my VP for approval, or I want to send it to my subordinates for review. And I had to do that a lot as a business analyst, right? Here, it makes your life easy. You can take the work items that you have existing in your ADO workshop, whatever you've created, and use our create request option where you can send multiple work items to multiple users at the same time for both approval and review, right? So what I'm doing here is then, of course, as we go through our demo, I'm also going to show you how you can send your documents out for review and approval, and that, let me tell you, is a lifesaver, right? So what I'm going to do here is that today is the lovely date of March 31st, and I'm going to say this is a review and approval, right? And folks, here, the beauty of working with this tool is that you never need to go into your Outlook. If you may recall, in today's business, if you're working with documents, MS Word, and you are now going into Outlook, you're linking or attaching your documents to for your review and approval, and now you're running out of your Outlook space, yeah? Because I don't know about you guys, but I had to run to my IT folks all the time and say, hey folks, I'm running out of Outlook space, give me some more space, right? Here, you never have to go to your Outlook. Everything will be done for you from here, and you can literally speak to the folks that you're sending your approval and review by using your review message. Now I'm going to talk to, let's say I'm sending it to Asif, right? And I'm saying, please review, right? And then maybe I'm sending it to some Steve and saying, Steve, please approve, right? All these work items, I'm just going to put some gibberish in here, la-di-da-di-da, and then I'm going to say done, right? Now, these work items are being sent out for review and approval to different folks. Now, I can select who should I send these work items for review and who are the folks that should be approval. And again, this process will apply to your documents as well. Just keep that in mind. I'm showing it to you once because I'm sending the work items from ADO, but I can do the same thing for documents too. So when I'm here, I'm saying, I say, who, of course, folks must exist in your project. Let's see, who do I have in my project? Okay, it's myself. So I'm going to send it to Asif Sharif as a reviewer and to myself as an approver. Done. The beauty of this is to folks that you can actually have a due date. Now, how many times people have come to you and say, when is your review due by? Well, guess what? That portion we're taking out. We're already giving you a review for the approval date. By default, is today plus 7 days. You can select whatever it wanted to be. If you want to change your default, you can. Today's Thursday. I know Good Friday is coming up. I want my review and approval done by Monday. Done. All right. And then I'm going to be able to send this out. Once I send this out, an email notification is generated that is sent out to your users and to yourself. So let me just quickly show you the email as well. Of course, it's real time, and there she is, right? Here, it shows you that it's gone to 2 folks, and this is your review message. So I never had to come into Outlook. Everything was done for me from my online tool, right? And the message that I wrote to my review and approvals is right here as well. And it shows you, this is the link, folks, that they will need to click on to see the window that we're seeing right here, as in how your review and approval will be shown. Beauty in it. I never had to worry about selecting any or attaching any work item. Now that's what we were doing right from our ADO. We were able to create reports. We were able to create our review and approval. Now, there's some restrictions, right? When you go into queries too, queries is a wonderful tool. You can create queries of many types in here too. I've created some queries here for, of course, I'm going to say my test cases, my work items, whatever I want it to be. But also, if you may recall, that you can select any one of these work items and you can actually push them onto your dashboards too. That's how you can create your dashboards, right? Now, going back into backlogs, we know that ADO have some limitations. And a few of the limitations are that when you're looking at this list here, it doesn't kind of look like an MS version. You have to go into the work item to see what the properties of the work items are. You need to understand what did you add, and now if you need to add some more work items, some more properties to it too. So we're all slave to our nature. Now, I know as a trainer that when I used to train people, everybody was kind of pushing back whenever new things come on board. So what we did is that we wanted to keep that sense of known sense, right? Like it's known grounds that you have, and for which we created Smart Docs. Because in Smart Docs, you are able to create your requirements, rather be a BRD, SRS, your change requests, your PRD, whatever you want to create, you can create in a format which kind of looks and feels in the same way as it would in an MS Word. Now, what I have created here is that, of course, I've created a BRD here for your review today. And you see in this My document, I'm just going to minimize this so you have a better canvas. I do a little bit of a painting, so you will hear the word canvas pop up from time to time. And you see that I've created these work items. The moment I go in here, not only that I can see my work items, I can also see the properties and the values, whatever you may call it, the contents of your work items. You can see it in one view, right? And I'm saying, well, this is great. Show me if this is my document view, can I turn this off? Sure. I can turn my document view off, and now I'm interested in seeing what sorts of work items that I have pushed into my document. Well, you see this section work item, you're like, I'm familiar with Epic, feature, user stories, but what is this section work item? Well, let me ask you this. When you're creating a document, and you were, let's take a BRD, for example, right? As a business analyst, you would create that, and you would have your purpose, your introduction, your sign in, your business overview, your project overview, your in scope, out scope, your appendices. Where do you put all that jazz when you're working on an online tool? Well, guess what? We solved that problem for you. We created a work item called section, which is a non-tangible work item. And of course, you can drop all of your non-tangible work items, I call them, you can call them whatever you like to, under section work item. So it kind of looks and feels as you've been working in your MS Word, right? So now the second question that you asked me, well, this is great, Shala. How do I go about adding a new work item to it? Because this is something that you've already created. No problem. Because most of you are ADO workers, you know that by clicking on the plus sign, it gives you an ability to create a brand new work item, right? And of course, that's the hierarchy that has been granted to you. And I'm going to talk about the hierarchy shortly as well, how you can actually create a hierarchy in your document the way that you want it to be, right? So this is the hierarchy that I've created. And if I go into Epic and I say, well, I'm going to build a brand new work item here. I'm going to call this Epic for demo 111, bingo. I've just created a brand new work item that is in part of my document now, right? So this is helping me in building my requirements document right here. I'm just going to go into this one document here and see if I have made any changes to it. Great. Okay, perfect. Now, once I've created this, other thing that you can do while you are saying, well, this is great, Shala, I want to be able to insert existing work items that I have, because I don't want to start from scratch. I've already done a whole lot of work in my ADO, and I want to be able to bring that work into my documents if I do decide to become part of Modern Requirements family. Sure, no problem. You can use the insert option. And as I was showing you that you can use Modern Requirement tools in Azure DevOps, you can also use Azure DevOps tool in Modern Requirement. And one of them is queries, because you're like, well, I have created these queries. There are some wonderful queries that I've created. You can bring your work items here, and then you can drag and drop these work items into your document as you want them to be. Not only that, you can do IDs. So if you're really good with numbers and you're like, I remember all my work item IDs, sure, punch them in. You can say 7672, comma, and you can continue to add the IDs as you like them to be. Now, what if you have no queries and you can't remember any of the work item IDs? No worries. There is the title contains to the rescue. Why? Because you do remember that when you were creating your work items, we're very particular how we title our work items. For if I'm creating a requirement and it's a specific requirement that I'm working on a project, I will name it to what I will recall to what it should be. Yeah, like if it is for instance, if I'm working with user management or I'm working with application management, I will call it user editor. So what I'm going to do here is I know that I've used the word user a lot in my work items. Bingo, life saved, right? Because disaster averted, I don't have anything, but I can still bring these work items into my document by, as you can see, that any work item that will have the word user in the title will pop up, right? So we have some features and we have some user stories that contain the word user. Now I'm ready, I can go ahead and drag and drop this work item into my document. Now you see at some point it's red and some point it's green. The reason why that is that it's simply looking at the hierarchy that you have selected. And you're thinking, well, Shala, wait a second, where does this hierarchy come into being? Well, the hierarchy is selected by meta template, right? Now, meta template is a one-time practice. You create a meta template, excuse me, and then you can actually have this meta template, A, to be utilized by all of your users in your project, and B, you can share it between projects. How beautiful is that? Because as we talked about, remember the things that we talked about in our slideshow in the beginning, that we are doing requirements management, but we're also doing reusability. We're also doing time management. We're also doing resource management, because here I'm creating a meta template as a lead, and then all of my BAs can come in here and start building their requirements document based on the meta template that I have created, right? Now, the other beauty of this is that you don't have to abide by the rules of what have been thrown at you from ADO. ADO says when you're creating your backlogs, this must be epic feature user stories or whatever you have created in your process template. Here, you can create the structure of your document as you want it to be. For instance, you're not interested in epic and feature. All you're interested in your user stories and test cases because you want to build a document that you can now share with other folks as well. Sure, if that is what you like, that is what you will create, right? We will teach you how to drive. How fast you drive, how slow you drive is entirely up to you, right? So that is your meta template, and this is what determines the structure of your document. Now, saying that, we've just talked about how to add work items, how to bring in work items. What if you're looking at this and you're like, well, I want to be able to add some properties to my work item. By double clicking on a work item, it brings you to our smart editor. And this smart editor is literally smart editor because it gives you the ability to build, what is this called? We're looking at something like to build something that we do in MS Word. So I'm going to write this. This is for a demo. And what if you want to do, you want to bold it, you want to italic it, you want to underline it, you want to change your font. So a rich text, right? You want to bring in some rich text in here, you want to change the size of it. And maybe if you want to copy and paste some logos from your website or when you're working with the clients, no problem, you can do that too. You can build tables in here as easy as 1, 2, 3, put in the value in there. This is going to be first. I'm misspelling stuff, but that's fine. This is second, this is my third iteration, and then I'm going to put in some notes in here. And what if I wanted to color code that? This color is going to be green because my first iteration is doing great, second, not so much, and then my third iteration is going to be in trouble. I know that already. I'm going to save and close it. Any work that I do here is going to be real time and it will show up in your document right away. And not only that, this work item will exist in ADO too. Now that's done. What if you're saying that I want to be able to do versioning? Sure, you can do versioning of your document as well. I created a version of this on March the 26th in 2021. I now want to see what changes happened to my document from when I originally created it. Sure, I will go to the compare pop-up, do a comparison, and it shows you in a red line view of the things that you have changed in your document. As you can see, these are the new work items that I brought in. If I turn off my document view, the new work items that you added on will show in a red line view. So overall, Smart Docs Of course, my boss calls it a workhorse because that's what it is, right? It is a user-friendly, flexible, and extremely manageable tool. So for all your problems that you're doing online, Smart Docs will help you to kind of eliminate that. Now from here, as we promised that we're going to show you how you can send your whole document out for review and approval, no problem. I can click on this and the process is the exact same how we were sending out our work items. Your documents could be anywhere from 50 pages to 100 pages to 200 pages, right? I never have to do attachments. I can just send my document out right straight from here for review and approval. And the folks will then start reviewing and approval. Now, if we go into from here, I'm going to take you into the review and approval process. Now, as a reviewer or as an approval, remember, I set myself as an approver as well. I can go ahead and, which one do we send today? This one right here into my active request that I have sent it. And of course, nothing is lost. You will be able to see all the requests that you've sent out. You will be able to see what are closed. And as a person that received your approvals and reviews, you will be able to see in this bucket as well, right? So you're never lost. You're never looking for help. Where's my emails? I'm not going to go fetch through 500 emails to look for one review and approval that came through to me. I can come onto my online tool and see what was sent to me from me to do my review and approval. Now, how do I do review and approval? As easy as is, I'm looking at this and I can do an actual Smart Doc view because I know that this has the properties available to it. I can go ahead and approve this. Okay, this is done. I'm happy with it. This one maybe needs some work. I'm going to go ahead and reject it. But when you're rejecting a work item, what the system does, it actually prevents you from rejecting a work item without putting in a comment. Did you guys see a little red pop-up that came up here? Because it makes sense, right? If you're going to reject my work, tell me why you're rejecting it. Simple as that. I'm going to say this needs, oopsie, qu'est-ce que c'est? Work, let's talk, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and reject it. Now, the beauty of this is that when you're rejecting and approving work items, not only that you're doing in modern requirement, if anybody that is an ADO and looks at your work item will be able to see how the work item was, if it was rejected or if it was approved. And also the comments that you've added will be available here as well, right? So integration, folks, very important. To me, that's the beauty of working within an online tool that's integrated with your any part of your team that you're working with, your BAs, your developers, your testers, all that. I want to be able to work with all of my teams, right? Done. I've approved, I've rejected my work items. Not only that, as an initiator, you don't have to wait around to get your emails, right? Because notifications are set to you when a work item is rejected. However, I can go into the detail tab and I can see, well, look at that. Shala Joseph is doing a great job. She has approved one work and she has rejected one work item. So she is doing the work. Asif Sharif, on the other hand, hasn't done anything. If he had reviewed my document, there would be a little tick mark right here indicating that review has been done. So, and also, if you want to have a conversation between your folks in your, while you're doing your review and approval, sure, you can actually use the submit comment button and you can have a conversation between your reviewers and your initiators or anybody that has access to that specific review and approval. So overall, we make your life easy when you are sending your work items or your documents out for review and approval. Now, saying that, what if you wanted to take a picture of these work items and you wanted to save them? You're like, well, this is great. All my work items that have been approved and reviewed, I want to take a picture of it. What do we have for that? Baseline. Yes, you guessed it right. From review and approval, of course, you can create a baseline from anywhere. You can create a baseline from your backlog work items by using our blue menu. You can use it from queries. You can use it from your Smart Docs. If you're sending your review and approval for, and you're creating a baseline from it, it actually gives you the option. Do you want to use the latest version? Do you want to use the revision on which the work items are approved and rejected? Or do you want to use the existing revision? Well, I want to do a latest revision because I want to take a picture of my work items as they appear now. Click OK, and a baseline will be created for you, right? Let's call this from review and done. Right now that I've created this taken a picture of my work items, I still have the capability of adding more work items too. And folks, baseline is one of the tools where you can go back in time Remember Back to the Future, right? We can go back in time and we can say, well, show me what work items look like on March the 2nd. I don't know if I did any work on that day. Well, I did, look at that. And I can actually bring all or some work items into this list that I've already created from my review and approval. If I want to do that, sure. Maybe I want to bring a user story in here. Select it. You can, of course, select one or many, save it. Now, once this is saved, any changes that will be made to your work item will be accounted for in here. For instance, if I go into the Compare tab, it will show you as no change because no work items have been, I've just created this. I haven't done any work to any of the work items. So what if I go into this Epic and I make a change to it, right? I will go and say, this is a change to show change. Isn't that fancy? And we're going to push in a little image too, just for, for some fun sake. And we've just made a change. It still says no change. I'm going to go ahead and make a change to this feature as well, really quickly. Let's say, I'm just going to say, hello, change is coming, right? Save and close. Now, you're saying, well, wait a second, Shala, it still says no change. Well, why? Because I'm still in my baseline. I haven't refreshed my system to fetch the data that the changes have made. Now, look, keep an eye on the revision ID too, how they will change as well the moment I click on refresh. So you see there's changes. It's showing me what changes they have done. Revision IDs have now increased by 1 digit. As IT folks, we know every time there's a change that is done to a work item, there's a new revision ID that has been created, right? Now I have the opportunity to look at this and say, well, show me what did it actually look like when I made the change to it. I've just changed the location of it, so that's fine. Let's go back and refresh it. Okay, there it is. So for this Epic, I want to see, let's look at the Compare tab, and I'm going to see, what are the changes that have been done? Well, the changes that you've made to your work item anywhere, rather be you have made it from ADO, so you were in your backlogs and you made some changes, they will appear here, folks, because remember, Modern Requirement and ADO is integrated. They're both working hand in hand together, right? So I'm looking at this and saying, okay, this is a change that's done, but you also have the capability of going back and seeing what it looked like when it was in revision 1. Well, this is what it looked like in revision 1. Now, any of this, so maybe your work item went through the project lifecycle and has like 20 different revisions. You have the capability of going through each one of those revisions if you need to, right? Now, other thing that you can do here is that you have looked at your revisions, you can do a rollback. You're like, well, I don't like it the way that it looks right now. I wanted to roll back to what it looked like when I took the picture first. Sure, you can do titles in rich field, or you can do all fields. And you can click OK, and what the system will do, it will bring it back to what it looked like when originally you created that. Right? Now, it removed the information and saying, no worries, I have put it back to what it was. I'm going to go back here, refresh my screen, and oh, so it's showing you that it has gone back to number 5 because I had made some changes to what it looked like, right? And of course, this still shows as change because I didn't push it back to exactly what it looked like. I pushed it back to what it was for a new change that I wanted to make it to. I believe I went to 2, not to 3. But the whole idea here is that you can actually look at your work items, see what the changes were, and revert them back to what it was. Not only that, our baseline allows you to reusability. What it means is that you can copy work items. Of these work items, I can copy them in the same project, or I can push it to a different project. So if Shala is working on a project and then Steve comes to Shala and say, hey, you created some features and some user stories that I want to use in my project, no problem. Let me push those work items to you and you will be able to use them in your project. The only prereq for that is that to make sure that your process template is the same, because your work items must exist in both of the process template, right? So that's your baseline. Now, let me take you into the world of diagramming, because that's one of my favorite tools in terms of when I'm creating diagrams. Why? Because in today's business, when you're working with Visio, right? You're working with Visio and you're maybe working with any application that you're working with. What do? You create your diagram, you create your flow charts, and you're like, well, now I need to go and kind of link it to my requirements. Well, that part is taken away, because here you can create your diagrams, your flow charts, and you can link it to the requirements as you're working with your flowchart. So of course, we've got different stencils available here. You can use your BPN, you can use your BOM models, expanded, whatever work items or whatever stencils that you want to work with. Of course, I'm working with basic flowchart here. And it's as easy, it doesn't matter which one do you use, it's just as easy as dragging and dropping them into your canvas. So if I remove this, and I'm going to say this is not an internal, this is a not external, but an internal database. So this is, actually, you know what? Let's put in a sub-process right here. Right? Let's call this a sub-process. And done. I've just brought in a brand new node, and I've just created this. I'm going to go ahead and check in my changes. Let's pretend that this is a extensive diagram that somebody came in and created for you. Now your job as a business analyst is to start building requirements around it. How do we do that? Well, right here, you can either bring in your existing requirements to link to this work item, or you can start building brand new work items right from your diagram module too. And that's the beauty of it. I can say, well, I have nothing that speaks to the sub process of this diagram. Well, you can select what sort of work item that you want to create. If you want to do a business requirement, you want to do a function or non-functional requirement, sure. I'm going to say new sub process, and bingo, I've just created a brand new work item, right? So overall, what the diagram module is doing, it's what were we doing in our previous life? We were generating our requirements, our scenarios, our test cases, but here, rather than the old traditional way, everything is going to be integrated. But what I just showed you is manually. What if I tell you that the system is able to create automatic generation of work items for you? Well, as a business analyst, I would love that. Why? Because it saves me time management, right? So I'm saying here, if I go to the analysis tab, do you see the color coding changed? Because the system is detecting what could potentially be your work items, rather be it a user story, a functional requirement, or non-functional requirement, whatever you want it to be, because I can select my work item types right from here, right? So I'm just going to say, this is my scenario 1, this is my scenario 2, this is my scenario 3. And if, of course, they're just suggestions. You don't have to take them as if you don't want to. But if you're like, well, this is good, I'm going to go ahead with this one, and this is going to be my past path, right? And I'm going to go ahead and publish it. The moment I publish it, folks, it becomes a work item, right? Now I have this user story in my hand. And of course, it's going to be available in ADO too. I can start working on this. And what the system does, it puts in a narrative, right, based on your flowchart, and it gives you the picture of what it selected to be the work item that you needed to create. Not only that, you have created this work item, you can do use case scenarios, and just the same way you can do test cases as well. So if I've created a test case earlier here, it will give me the steps, because it will pick up the steps from your flow, make those steps as part of your test case, and now you can do your expected results as you want it to be, and you can say user logs in, right? And if you're not happy with the number of the action steps that you have, of course, add more if you like to, right? Save and close it, and this work item has now been created for you. So overall, as I said earlier, it makes your life easy when you're working with your flowcharts, your diagrams, and creating requirements around that. Not only that, I believe that I mentioned that in your Smart Docs, you can build your diagrams right from your Smart Docs, or you can take this work item and push it into a Smart Doc as well. Now, nobody has to wonder, because all the work items that you have linked together are going to be available in one place. Now, talking about that, you're saying, well, we're doing a whole lot of linking work items. I want to be able to see one-stop shop for all of my work items that are linked together. Well, for which we will go into traceability, right? Because traceability, well, we all know how tedious work this could be. And as a business analyst and a PM, I've spent many nights, weekends, weeks, and sometimes months on creating traceability too. And the running joke is, I've always told my boss, where have you been all my life? Because this would have made my life quite easy, right? We have two types of traceability. A, it is horizontal, and B, it is intersection. So in the horizontal traceability matrix, what do we do for you? We allow you to have a full end-to-end analysis of all of your work item types. For instance, you're seeing here, I have 3 Epic, feature, user story that are decomposing into your non-functional requirements. I go to the editor tab, I can switch it to whatever work item types that I want to see. Maybe I'm interested in only seeing, I don't want to see epic, I want to see my beginning would be feature, right? So I want to see feature on the top, then I want to see my user stories here. Right, I'm just changing the whole entire functionality that I've done. From my user stories, I'm not interested in my non-functional requirement. Just show me my user stories. And maybe I want to be able to add some test cases in here too. So let's say I want to do some test cases. Right, done. So I have some bugs in there. I have some tasks in there. Let's run this. So this is what you saw before. And this is what you see now. So literally, it took me what? Less than 30 seconds to run this. I have my features, my user stories, my bugs, my test cases, and my test cases that are linked to my user stories, right? And not only that, you can take this and you can push it to Excel as well. And it will show you exactly the same way that you see here. So again, not being discriminatory, we want you to be able to share what you have ran online with others in the same format. Right? Now, this is your horizontal. Let's talk about really quickly about your intersection matrix. In your intersection matrix, of course, it shows you the ability, it gives you the ability to have a two-dimension view of the relationship between your work items. Right now, I'm doing user stories and test cases. Let's go switch it. Let's go switch it and say, you know what, show me epic, right, and feature. Show me the link between my epic and my feature. Great. I'm going to go ahead and run this. Okay, and there you have it. You have your epic and your feature, how the two-dimension view it is. And when you're seeing these two types of arrows, one is unidirectional and the other one is bidirectional, and you're like, why are they different? Well, because we want you to see which one is linked as a parent-child and which one is linked as related, right? And of course, unidirectional are the link types that are parent-child, and bidirectional are related link types. But as a PM, I'm more so interested in orphan records. Sure, I can run orphan records as well. I'm a happy pappy because I don't have any orphan records in my project. I can go home and be happy. Now going back to it, if I want to push this onto my Excel, sure, there you have it. I can push this information the same way I did in my horizontal traceability matrix to intersection matrix onto traceability matrix to my Excel as well. Done, right? And I can share it with anybody I need to. Making your life easy? 100%, I would say so. All right, folks, those are the things that I wanted to show you guys today. I hope it was useful. Asif, over to you for questions.
All right, thank you, Shana. So folks, we've got some questions. Now, most of the questions we did answer as the questions were coming up, but I will review a few questions. But if you do have other questions, please type it in the question panel. And there was a question that says, can you explain end-to-end traceability? Shara, do you want to take that?
Sure. In terms of, I will comment on it, and of course you can add to it if you like to. From end-to-end, in terms of explaining end-to-end traceability, that you are capable of seeing how your work items are linked together. For instance, if you have a work item that has maybe more than one parent, so you have your parent-child link type and you have a related link type, how do you see that? The system will be able to show you the link types here, A, and B, you can also create link types on the fly when you're in your traceability matrix.
So just to add to that, so you can create end-to-end traceability all the way from, say, if you're doing Agile, from epic to features to stories to test cases to bugs. You can also do it from test plan to test suite to test runs to test cases, the result of the test case, and also at the step level, whether it passed or failed. So you can get traceability through broad spectrums of your information from both the work item perspective and the test management perspective. The other question is, can you create an enterprise project reporting for traceability? So the answer is yes. Both for traceability and reporting, you can do cross-project traceability. So it doesn't have to be limited to a given project. There's another question that talks about needing support for Req-IF import. So we do have import. So Azure DevOps natively has Excel integration bidirectionally. So you can always bring data from Excel and bring data back to Excel from Azure DevOps. But you can also make updates in one and update the other. We do have a Word import utility, and we have been working on a Req-IF import utility. So the Req-IF capability is probably another couple of months before it gets released. But if you are interested in an early release, let us know, and we'll work with you. The other question that came up is, do you need licensing for review and approval? And you don't. You don't need a modern requirements license for review and approval. You can use the free stakeholder license to do that. The other question we have is, does the review send out a reminder? Yes, there is an option to manually send a reminder as well as have that automated. So the reminder will be sent before it's due. The other question is, again, on whether you need licensing for review and approval, and you don't. You can also view a smart doc or diagram without having a paid license. You can use a free license for that. There's a question on synchronization bridge from doors and other tools. So we work with a couple of partners that support bridging data from doors and a variety of other systems. We actually did a migration to one of the largest implementation of Doors Next Gen in the world a couple of years ago, or one of our clients did that, to Azure DevOps and modern requirements. Those bridges are available. There's about 100 some odd bridges available for syncing data or migrating data from doors and other systems into Azure DevOps and modern requirements. There is an interesting question that says, can you have some users doing work through Azure DevOps and others doing work through MR? So the answer to that is yes. In fact, in most organizations, the business analyst, the product manager, maybe the project manager, maybe some of the team leads might use modern requirements, but the developers and the testers are going to be using Azure DevOps natively. Even if you have created your backlog using Azure DevOps, you can still drag and drop and bring those into, say, smart docs within modern requirements. So you can still be using both in tandem. And the reason you can do that is because modern requirements is built on Azure DevOps. So both we use Azure DevOps for storing our data, so you get a single source of truth. We use it as an app server, so we inherit its process template. We inherit the security model from there as well. So it's a fully integrated system. It's not a separate system that does data interchange. And thus, you can have different people using either Azure DevOps or modern requirements or both. There was a question on whether there is an ERD support in the diagramming module. And so we do support a business object modeling, so you can define your entities and attributes and the relationships between them. But we don't have a sort of the classical ERD that you would use for a database design tool. So it's not a database design tool, but as far as a product owner is concerned or a business analyst is concerned, you want to do business object model that we do support in diagramming. There was another question that's, is there a visual representation of work items to the diagrams? There's two parts to that answer about visualizing work items. One is you can use the impact analysis tool to see a mind map-like view of how work items are interconnected. Or alternatively, you can, of course, if you're using diagramming, you can link your work items or create work items against the shapes or the links in the diagram or against the diagram itself. So there's linking available within the diagram, but of course you can use the impact analyzer to see a bigger view of the work items. The other question we have, can we use inherited process template? So yes, so modern requirements will work with Azure DevOps using both the inherited process template and the XML process template. So it works identically with both of those setups. I think if I were to guess, I would probably say about 50, maybe even 70% of people use inherited process template. Unless you've been using Azure DevOps or TFS for a long time, then you might have the XML process template, but it works with both of them. The other question is, how do you track, review, approval, comments on requirements from non-MR users? So for the important point to note here is that you may not be using MR on a continuous basis, but let's say you are using Azure DevOps, and your sprint requirements are getting reviewed by, say, the developers or the tester or the manager or other stakeholders. So they can still use modern requirements, and they don't have a paid license. They'll use the free stakeholder license to do the review within modern requirements. Of course, Azure DevOps natively does have the ability for you to add comments against the work item, but that's very informal. It doesn't provide a structure around it, but if you use the review capability, you do get a much better process management around that. The other question is, I have hundreds of Visio documents, can they be imported? So you don't have to import your Visio diagrams. We actually have a product called Smart Visio for DevOps. So it's an extension to Visio that will connect to your Azure DevOps project, and you can do all the things Shala talked about, or you might have seen that it does. So you can create work items against your shapes and auto-generate use cases and test cases and scenarios and so on, but you do it directly within Visio. So there's no import required. So that's actually a better way to do it. The other question we have here is, what are your thoughts on MSFT's move to Git for stuff over ADO native? So we've been working with Microsoft on Git, GitHub. Now, if you're talking about Git, just the Git, so Microsoft now supports Git as well as TFBC for source code repository. And we support both of them. And in fact, many of our clients also use GitHub for the repos with Azure DevOps. The move to GitHub, if that's what you're referring to, is a multi-year program for Microsoft. We already plugged into the various teams within Microsoft to make sure that we progress with them as they put in the right capabilities within GitHub. So fast forward 3 years, when Microsoft has the right sort of work item management capabilities into GitHub, we'll be right alongside them with those capabilities. The other question we have is cost for PMBA, etc. Yeah, for cost, please reach out to us at info@modernrequirements.com. And so it depends. So we have got a few different product SKUs that you can use. And there's your floating license, you have user-based license, you have site license. So there's a bunch of permutations available. So we can certainly give you all the information you need on that. There's a question here that says approvers and reviewers don't need a MR license. Yes, that is correct. But do they need an ADO license? So they don't need an ADO license. They can actually use the ADO stakeholder license as well. So on both the ADO side and the MR side, they can actually use the free stakeholder license from Microsoft and from us. Code reviews are integrated into trace analysis. So trace analysis will work with any work item type. So if you're using work items for code reviews, if there's a work item created, you can have it appear within trace analysis. So anything that is a work item. But in addition to that, under the test management area, so you know that the test run is not a work item. And the test case result or the step results themselves are not work items. So we have created virtual work items and virtual links so that you can also report on the test management side. So reporting and traceability is available for any work item type as well as test-related artifacts. The next question is, also would like to know, when we create meta template, can we create the columns to identify the state of the requirements, et cetera, et cetera? And so the answer is yes. So you can define within the meta template what properties you want to show within the smart doc. So if you want to include states or other properties, you can include that within the smart doc view so that those fields will be available within the smart doc itself. You don't have to open up the work item. And so it does present those fields linearly, one after the other. So it's not adding columns, because the idea is not to create a grid, but to create a document-like experience. So, but you can configure that as you need to. Somebody asked a question, can you speak to Alice a bit? So Alice is our requirements elicitation tool. It's a bot. So she'll talk to you, and you can configure the conversation script for her as well. And the whole idea is that our FAQ module is a set of questions that you answer, questions to define your requirements. But it's just a series of questions and answers. Alice takes it to the next level, where based on your question and the answer you give it, it will ask you a follow-on question and a follow-on question. And through that process, we'll create your work items, your backlog items, or other work item types. So Alice is that. Do you support BPMN 2 icons? Yes, we do have support for BPMN. We have some of the shapes for BPMN 2. We've been adding to that. And I think in our next release, which is going to be the next, not the one that's coming out shortly, but the one after that, probably in May, we'll be fully supporting BPMN 2. The other question we have is, coming to requirements, a single customer requirement will be classified into system requirements, software requirements, architecture requirements, where the fault management requirements will be linked to any one of the above mentioned classification. Is there a way to handle such linkage requirements? Yes, you can. So the best way to do this would be in Smart Docs. Create your right meta template, which defines the possible structure, and then you can either create the lower level requirements for fault management requirements underneath the appropriate type of requirements, or you can simply drag and drop it from your right panel and then assign it to other higher level requirements. In fact, in Smart Docs, you can also have the same work item appear many times. So it's not it's not that you can only have the same requirement appear once, but you can have it multiple times. So imagine a test case. A test case might be applicable against multiple requirements, or a mitigation might mitigate multiple risks. So in that way, you can actually use Smart Doc there. And there are other ways to do it, but Smart Doc would be my thing to do. The other thing is if my organization is interested in using MR, where do you recommend we start our journey? What are the first steps? So in using MR, the first thing you should do is to get familiar with its capabilities. Now, if you go to our website, under Help Center, you'll find a series of bootcamp videos. So they're normally 3 to 5 minutes long. And then if you're interested more into certain topics, go to the tutorial section, and those are longer videos. And if you are further want to drill down into a capability, go to the next level, which is the bootcamp videos, which is about an hour long on every topic. So first, get some sort of broad understanding. The second thing you would do is, for example, most people will start with the Smart Docs. So they'll configure Smart Docs. That's provided you already have defined your process template. If not, start with process template, define the Smart Doc template and the reporting template, and you're off to the races. There's a few configurations you probably want to do, but of course, don't get into analysis paralysis. Define something, start using it, you'll morph it as time goes by. But of course, if you need more guidance there, please reach out to us. Can a mockup, the next question is, can a mockup directly create, can a mockup be directly created in a requirement? So the mockup cannot be created in the requirement. However, you can create a mockup and link it to the requirement, because a mockup might refer to multiple requirements. So you would define the mockup, link requirements to it, or you'll create linked requirements against the mockup or the elements therein. And the last question is there an implementation service available? And the answer is yes, there is implementation services available. And typically what we do is we start with a discovery session to understand your needs. And then that provides us probably in a 2-hour session, enough information to come up with a plan. And then depending on what you need, the steps are defined, which really essentially consist of doing configuration or teaching you how to do configuration. And then there's also training available where either you can self-learn or you can do an instructor-based training. So with that, I think we have covered all the questions. Folks, if you do have any other questions that come up later on, please feel free to reach out to us. A good email address is info@modernrequirements.com. It's a catch-all email address. So any questions, concerns you have, please reach out there. And with that, we'll wrap up. I thank you all very much for attending. I hope you all will stay safe, and we'll speak to you real soon. Oh yeah, by the way, we'll be sending out a survey. At the end of this session, you will see a survey show up on your screen. You can fill it out then, or you'll get an email. If you can fill that out, that'd be great, because that helps us pick new topics and see how we need to modify, how well we have done, where we can improve. So please do give us your feedback. And I think our next webinar is probably going to be in the next 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, but we'll be sure to send you all information on that. And so until then, take care, and we'll speak soon. Bye-bye.